One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. And we are back with another preview in our preview season. Is absolutely popping off on the channel right now. Our numbers are quite frankly insane, Trey, especially on the podcasting side. So many new fans discovering us over the last couple of months, finding us on Twitter. We've had some graphics go out for the new college football video game. It's been a lot of fun, writing, creating tweets, doing all the things. And when I say doing all the things, we are literally doing all the things. You have battled all kinds of technical issues. You've moved heaven and earth to be here tonight. You're basically coming to us from your phone as we get ready to preview the Sun Belt, because after all, content stops for no man.
Yeah, for a couple things here. Want to shout out the guys at the Thundercast who were originally supposed to join me on this Sunbelt preview. We couldn't make it work because of mutual technical difficulties on multiple days. I tried to make this work with Garrett last night, and here you and I are tonight. Like you said, I'm recording from my phone. And if anyone knows if anybody can provide a dumb person like me a little tech support with an Apple MacBook to access just lost disk space. It says that there's like 60 gigabytes of disk space that I just can't touch for some reason, and I need to know how to tap into that. So if anybody has any advice, hit your boy up.
might need a Claude bot to start rummaging around in there, find you a solution. Well, we're glad to have you tonight, especially because you authored our Sunbelt preview, both the East and the West. Like I said, those series, we're almost through the group of 6 and then moving into the Power 4 very, very soon. That's been popping off over on our Substack. If you're looking for easily digestible articles that aren't just kind of generic sentences strung together, you'll like our previews. So we would certainly encourage you to go find us over there, Twitter, X, wherever. It's linked all over the place, or you can just search 3 Tech Pod Substack and you'll find us there. Sunbelt is the topic of conversation tonight. And Trey, we're going to start in the East, then go to the West. And basically, because there's so many teams, thankfully still in a divisional format, we do thank the powers at the Sunbelt office for making it easier on us. But still, 14 teams in the conference, that's a lot of ground to cover. So what you came up with was the idea to basically give each team their elevator pitch, give the fans a couple of reasons why they should be interested in that team. We can kind of talk about the power dynamics and who's really a contender at the top of the conference, all of those fun, juicy bits, the schedules as well. But I think that was a smart way to kind of condense what could be otherwise a very, very long podcast. Remember back to year one, man, our previews for like 6 teams would go 2.5 hours. We're not trying to replicate that here tonight. So overall, though, I'd love kind of your general thesis on the Sun Belt as we start 2026, whether it be from the transfer portal, all the coaching changes, what kind of defines the Sun Belt heading into this season for you?
Yeah, I think on the surface, it feels like the deepest G6 league from just a pure talent and pure depth of team standpoint, especially when you look at the East Division. I wrote that it was the biggest gauntlet to run in the group of 6 conferences. Whoever comes out of the East Division is going to have already proven themselves by beating a lot of really, really solid teams. I think there's a couple teams that could get spicy in the West Division as well, but from top to bottom, it feels like it might be the deepest league in the G6. And I think we could have said that for, quite frankly, the last couple of years. The American got all the headlines for most of the 4 and early 12 team playoff eras. But the Sun Belt has been right there, and they finally got to break through last year with JMU sneaking up and stealing that last college football playoff spot, getting to take on Oregon, looking better than a certain power conference champion did against the Oregon Ducks in the playoff. But yeah, it's a fun league. It is a lot of different styles clashing. We're going to see that on display this year. I think a couple new teams trying some new stuff, trying to, fix some things that were holding them back last year. And I think this is a league that very well is going to be in the thick of that G6 playoff discussion come December.
I love that. That's exactly what we want. There's a lot of fun rivalries in the Sun Belt. I think we get reintroduced to every single year. You go on to ESPN Plus on just about any given Saturday, and you're going to find a fun Sun Belt Conference matchup, especially the deeper we get into the fall. So with that context laid, let's start in the East. By far the stronger of the divisions. The East has been that way for a number of years now. And the easiest way, I think, to preview this and kind of keep the listener along with us is to just go alphabetically, which means we would be starting with the Appalachian State Mountaineers. This is a team that has been kind of at the highest of highs in the G6 level, but they're undergoing some reconstruction, if you will, in year 2 of Dowell Loggins.
Yeah, Dowell Loggins, nice start last year, 4-2. It didn't go great after that. They finished the season, my math is good, 1-6, including the bowl game. They lost twice to Georgia Southern. Not a lot of fun down the stretch last year. But my elevator pitch to you, Mitch, is this is a roster rebuild that you shouldn't gloss over. I know a lot of our previews say, hey, they are bringing in X number of guys. So many people portaled in. They lost 41 players to the transfer portal last year. It was a total rebuild, but they are bringing in not just a really solid portal class, they're also bringing in the best high school recruiting class, not just in Appalachian State's history, but in the history of the Sun Belt Conference this year. So Dowell Loggins and his staff have gone to work. It's a lot of young talent, and they got to, win the battle of keeping them in Boone for not just this year, but actually getting to develop those guys and keep them out of the portal if they do find some diamonds in the rough. But the talent is not going to be the question. Now, can it all come together with so many new faces? It's 64 newcomers starting at fall camp. It's going to be, we joke a lot, it's name tags and handshakes, right? It's going to be a lot of that this year, but it's a lot of fun talent. It's a lot of former P4 guys coming in. The quarterback race is going to be really interesting. It's Malachi Singleton from Arkansas last year, who we saw a little bit in relief of Taylon Green, showed some nice things. Henry Hasselbeck, the son of Seahawks legend Matt Hasselbeck, and Tommy Ulowski from Kennesaw State, who is coming up from the Conference USA ranks. So it's an interesting three-way battle. It's going to be a lot of new, but the talent is unquestioned, man. I think that they're going to maybe push to have the most talented roster in this conference. It's just whether or not the coaches can get the most out of it.
They certainly don't get a friendly draw on the conference schedule side. You make the point that they have a couple of difficult non-conference games, East Carolina, NC State. They do get Old Dominion and James Madison at home, which is good. On the West, maybe the friendliest bounce. They get Louisiana Monroe and they get South Alabama, who is certainly in the middle of a rebuild. We'll see what the Jaguars have offensively, especially this year. We'll talk about them when we get to the West. But it seems like maybe a bridge too far to say that App State is a true contender for the conference with all this incoming talent and pieces that we have to gel. Is that fair?
I think it's fair. I think they're going to definitely take their lumps early. But like you said, they got a nice draw from the East. ULM and South Alabama is, you can do a lot worse than that. Drawing from the West Division, I should say. I think this is a bowl team. They were a bowl team because of opt-outs last year. I think this looks to me like a team that could make a bowl game on their own merit this year, win 6 or 7 games, but really peak at the right time. I could see it really coming together towards the end of the season where they've kind of built and crescendoed to a nice November where they clinch bowl eligibility. And then you hold on for dear life and hope that those freshmen aren't looking at other bigger schools in the area in the transfer portal next year.
Well, wouldn't it be fun to see like Malachi Singleton win the battle, use his dual athleticism to just kind of slice and dice Sunbelt defenses? Henry Hasselbeck could do it with his arm. Listen, Ilatowski, we saw some moments at Kent State. I don't imagine that he's the favorite to win the job right now. App State fans, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think this is a team that, as you kind of put at the end of that preview, if they can get the things going in the right direction by the end of the year, those young guys could really make their mark on not only the program but the conference as well, and that would be a whole lot of fun. I think that's a great outcome if you're an App State fan this year, for sure. Coastal Carolina is up next. Let's go to Conway and talk about the Teal Chickens. Now, you and I think just about everybody, were not fans of the Tim Beck hire. That it felt kind of desperate. It felt like we didn't have any answers. Oh, shoot, the homework's due at 9 a.m. this morning, and I got to come up with an answer. It didn't go well, right? Tim Beck was beyond useless, to put it quite simply, in Conway. But Ryan Beard comes over from Missouri State, a guy where he built that program really from not very much, took them into the FBS ranks, had some success. And now he's got enough talent maybe on this roster to get Coastal back to being fun, get Coastal back to being plucky on a week-to-week basis. If you look around the Twitter sphere, there's actually people ranking Coastal as maybe the second or third best team in the Sun Belt. That was a little bit surprising to me, but it's clear that folks are starting to believe in the Chanticleers again.
Yeah, I saw that tweet you're referencing, and that did surprise me as well. I don't have them quite as high, but my elevator pitch for you for Coastal Carolina is Ryan Beard is maybe the most underrated hire of the entire coaching cycle. I think this guy is a star in the making. I think that he is, unfortunately for Coastal Carolina, might not be long for Conway, because I think there's going to be some big programs sniffing around after a couple of years of a rebuild in Conway. So you look at what he did in Springfield, right? Like he not only guided them from the FCS to the FBS, he got Missouri State through the gauntlet that is the Missouri Valley Conference football, and he made them more competitive than they had been in years up in Springfield. So he knows how to coach, and he also knows it's going to be a little different than the Jamie Chadwell days, where it was, like the high-flying run game offense, the fun option-based offense, the Grayson McCalls of the world, right? He's going to build more from the inside out. That's how he got Missouri State to be successful in the transition year. He bolstered that line. He brought a lot of guys over from Missouri State that boast a ton of size, and I think that's going to be the difference. I think Chanticleer fans are going to see a lot more disciplined play on the offensive and defensive lines, and just dudes that look like they could be on a P4 roster in the interior. And that's going to, I think, make a lot of people excited. Now, they do have maybe the most wide open quarterback battle in the country. I've done some reading that says it's legitimately a 5-way battle going into fall camp, and no one's really separated themselves yet. Deuce Bailey came over with Beard from Missouri State. He's probably the guy with the inside track, but you got another former Arkansas Razorback in Trevor Jackson, Trey Guerra, who was the number 1 JUCO quarterback in the 2026 class out of Tyler Junior College here in Texas. So there's a couple different options there. It's going to be really interesting to see who Beard goes with for his first run through the Sun Belt.
On their schedule, starts out challenging. Road trips to West Virginia, Delaware. They play Liberty at home. Road trips to Marshall and James Madison are never easy things. So when it comes to the conference play, and I guess really the schedule in general, what do you kind of see as the ceiling, or maybe even the most realistic landing spot for the Chanticleers this season?
Yeah, they also, from the West, they draw Arkansas State and Louisiana, who are probably 2-3, 3-4, somewhere in there. It's a tough schedule, and I think that Delaware game is a real swing game there. The Liberty as well is going to be really tough coming out of Conference USA. So it's really going to depend on if they can take care of business out of conference. If they can beat up on CUSA and the two of the better teams in Conference USA, if they can find a way to win the games, I think they can make it to a bowl game. I think they can find enough wins towards the bottom of the division to show that they're not in the bottom and make it back to a bowl game. But this could be a rebuild year. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're a guaranteed bowl game. I think if you're 4-8, 5-7, but you're just not getting blown out like Tim Beck had accustomed to doing, the defense gave up over 59 points a game in the last 3 games last year. It was pathetic. So just show me some competitive losses, I think I wrote it in the preview article, but he lost 9 games by more than 20 points in his 3-year. That's bad. So don't do that. Just be competitive with the top of the division. Even if you go 4-8, 5-7, there's a lot of promise for the future, and I don't think anybody's panicking if that happens.
Yeah, buy all your stock in Ryan Beard. Certainly, he's going to elevate Coastal while he's there, and we'll see how long he is winning there in the Sun Belt. But I have no doubt he's going to win. He's going to win quickly there. Should be a whole lot of fun to see where the Chanticleers go in 2026 and beyond. Let's go to Statesboro now and talk a little Georgia Southern. Clay Helton thrives on change. Roster kind of seems like it overturns offensively, much like another Helton at Western Kentucky. They just are comfortable being uncomfortable, it seems. And this year on offense, it's no different. They were comfortable being uncomfortable last year as that bowl streak nearly came to an end. They hard charged down the stretch. So what are we talking about with the Eagles and their outlook here in the Eastern Division?
I actually think Georgia Southern is one of my early favorite pet cat teams. I'm really excited about what Helton's going to have on the field this fall. He does need to find a new starting quarterback. J.C. French transferred up to Cincinnati after Sorsby left for Texas Tech. He has 3 options coming in, a couple returnees, Weston Bryant and his son Turner Helton. And then Max Johnson coming over for, I think, like year 7 or 8 of his college career. He did not get the memo that the NCAA wants to cut down on older guys in the ranks. He is giving it one more go. And I think if he's healthy, I think he can be a really solid quarterback in this league. And I think that this offense is going to work well for him. The question is, of course, the health. He has had, I think 3 or 4 of his 7 seasons cut short by injury at this point. So he's not a guy that you can go into a season relying on. And I think having 2 guys that have been in the system, guy literally in the family, in Turner Helton's case, as other options are going to be really nice contingency plans there if the Max Johnson transfer doesn't work out. They're going to have a lot of talent on offense. They got 4 former 4-star wideouts in the portal from different various P4 ranks. And they also just have a lot of talent in the backfield as well. So OJ Arnold's gone in the backfield, but they do have David Medigna, who had over 4 yards per carry over the course of his career. And then he also has a true freshman in Ty Cummings, who I think could be a breakout star this year. It's the 7th highest ranked recruit in program history. So big opportunity for an instant impact there. And then over on the defensive side of the ball, they have one of the best playmakers in the whole Sun Belt as well, in MJ Stroud. So 6.5 sacks last year, 15.5 tackles for loss. I think that there's a really strong core here that could have Georgia Southern pushing for not just bowl eligibility, but if they can knock off one of the big guys, they're going to be right there in the thick of this division title race.
Well, speaking of knocking off one of the big dogs, this schedule is challenging, right? It's one thing to have a lot of talent. It is another thing to execute on Saturdays and stack up those wins. Tell me a little bit about this schedule that begins with a road trip to Clemson.
Yeah, it's Clemson, Jacksonville State, both on the road in non-conference. They have a home game with Houston, who is one of our favorites in the Big 12. Just a weird G6 hosting a Power 4 team there, but the league play is really, really difficult. They open at Coastal. That's going to be a pivotal game, it feels like, for both teams. They do get JMU at home, but they do go to Old Dominion. And they get Troy and Louisiana Tech from the West, who for my money might be the 2 best teams in that division. So the talent is going to be there. And I think that they are going to be maybe better than their record shows. I know we like to say that you are what your record says you are, but I think they are going to, if they finish 7 or 5 and 8 and 4, you might walk away thinking, man, that could be the best team in this league and the most complete team in this league. They just had a brutal gauntlet to run.
Well, let's go from Statesboro to Atlanta, where you've got a lot of positive things to say about Georgia Southern. Georgia State, listen, we root for all 138 teams, right? That's kind of our thing on this show. We want to make everybody's team feel special, give you the optimistic case. Now, that being said, we do have to call a spade a spade. Last year was terrible for Georgia State. Del McGee did not do very well in a 1-11 campaign. That being said, there's also some positives. There's reasons to believe that this team could at least have those fun moments, right? You had Ted Hurst last year that we were big fans of. That was kind of where we planted our flag with the Panthers. Tell me about what you like from Georgia State this year.
I like Cameron Brown. He's fun at the quarterback position. He's one of the most consistent. He was the most consistent quarterback. They churned through, I think, 3 guys last year. He had 3 starts, but he had 1,300 yards through the air in those 3 starts, and the rest of the appeared in 10 games, I should say, and had 1,300 yards in just 3 starts. So there's talent there if they can tap into it. Now, I'm wondering what the plan is around him. I'm not really sure that they brought in enough guys to really help him out and give him enough confidence to be consistent week in, week out. They did make some staff changes on the defensive side of the ball. Cam Clark comes over. He has some defensive coordinator experience at the FCS level. And then John Hainline was the defensive coordinator at Youngstown State. They recently had a pretty big turnaround as a program. They're back in the FCS playoff contention under his watch. So they're at least trying to make some changes. And that defense, Mitch, can't get much worse. It was 133rd in the FBS last year in total defense. I struggle when a coach goes 1-11 and it's not year one to fully buy in, if I'm being honest. But, I think that hopefully you can build around Brown. He has a full off season as a starter, and you can spring a couple upsets and show a little progress to give you confidence that, hey, the staff can get it done and continue to build, because they're right there in the middle of an extremely talent-rich area. You can build a program that wins 5-6 games just on talent in that metro area alone. So, yeah, I think the hope is that you build around Brown, you build some confidence, and you get back towards bowl contention. You're not going to win 6 games this year. I don't think that is, but you want to see signs of progress.
This schedule, as you try and pick and choose where to say, hey, a win is possible. This is your opportunity. Let's go find it here. Interesting non-conference slate. Kennesaw State, obviously the in-state team, Central Florida, and Northern Illinois also on the schedule. The road trips in conference, it's hard to feel like any momentum can build when you're going to JMU, to App State, to Marshall, all teams that you just feel like are going to have the talent and quite honestly, the continuity advantage.
Yeah, and probably the 3 toughest just venues in the conference as well, right? From a fan impact standpoint, I think they can be better than Northern Illinois. I think that's an opportunity, especially at home. Maybe you can spring an upset against a team like Louisiana at home, depending on when you get them. It's hard to go 1-11. It really is. Even if you're not that talented, it's hard to only win 1 game and no games against FBS competition. So the odds are in their favor of improving that. Now, am I going to take them in our win total improvement draft if we do that again in August? I don't know. I might let somebody else take that gamble. But I do think that there are small signs for optimism that they can be a little bit better this year.
Well, listen, we appreciate you making the effort. I know Georgia State fans are looking for reasons to get excited about the year. And you just have to find those little nuggets. Hopefully guys that you can build around, go win a couple of games and have a nice story at the end of the season. Let's now turn our attention to one of the teams that you led off our episode with, the James Madison Dukes. Playoffs last year, finally able to compete for the Sun Belt title after we got through the worst rule in sports. But they do lose Bob Chesney to UCLA. And so in comes Billy Napier. Sun Belt Billy is back. He lost a lot of talent off that roster from last year. Lonzo Barnett is at UCF. A lot of other guys followed Chesney to UCLA. So talk to me about, one, your confidence in Billy coming back to the Sun Belt, leaving Florida, back to maybe some more comfortable stomping grounds. And then 2, what do you like about this roster, a Dukes team that certainly should be right there again for Sun Belt championship?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of snickering when JMU hired Billy Napier. He's obviously fresh off of just being fired at Florida last year. Usually you see these guys take a couple years off before they get their quote unquote rebound job. I don't think JMU should be considered a rebound destination by any stretch of the imagination, but when you actually remove yourself from that, Billy Napier dominated this league for 4 years. From 2018 to 2021, he won 4 straight West Division championships, brought home the conference title in a shared capacity once, and then won it outright the next year. The SEC is going to eat up a lot of talented coaches. This dude knows how to coach football. He knows how to win in this conference. I'm really excited for this hire. Now, you mentioned that it's a big transition, just like when, just like the last coaching transition at JMU. There was a lot of exodus of the players following the previous coach. This is no different here. Alonzo Barnett, that you mentioned, is off to UCF. It looks like Cannon Coleman might be the favorite to replace him. He redshirted last year, but he was a dual threat option at Richmond before that. We know Billy Napier loves his dual threat guys. He was 13-1 as a starter for the Spiders 2 seasons ago. JC Evans also got some spot duty last year and was a big time threat in the bowl game a couple years ago. It's a lot of turnover, but this is still going to be one of the more talented teams in the league, and I think they might have the best coach in the entire division. So I think they're not going anywhere. I really don't think they might take a step back. Do I think they're going to make the college football playoff again this year? Probably not. But this is a program that's proven itself and proven that it can survive a big coaching change. It survived Kirk Cignetti to Bob Chesney. I think they're going to survive just fine with Chesney to Napier.
Arrington Maiden, former blue chip quarterback, joins that room as well. So the talent is there. Talk to me a little bit about the schedule, which includes some spicy matchups early. You've got a rivalry game to start. You've got a cross-country road trip. You've got a late season date with UConn, which we'll see what Jason Candle does up there with the Huskies. It's not a comfortable, kind of easy build up into the season type of schedule for the Dukes.
Yeah, the road slate's pretty nuts in general, honestly. They open against Liberty at home. I think that should be a win. Just looking at both teams on paper, JMU won it a season ago in Lynchburg. Liberty is really trying to find themselves right now. For all the change that's happening at JMU, Liberty is going through a lot as well. But that road gauntlet that you mentioned, Mitch, they go to San Diego State, so a big cross-country road trip crossing every time zone in America. They go to UConn in November. Who knows what the weather's going to be like in that one. They go to Old Dominion, who I think might be the biggest challenger to them in the whole division. And they have a Thursday night tilt at App State on October 22nd. And we know things get crazy in Boone, especially at weird times like a Thursday night. So you also get Troy in the cross division. They do get Southern Miss, so that's nice. I think Southern Miss is going to go through quite a rebuild this year. I know they're one of your favorite targets for a rebuild in the dynasty mode on College Football 27. But
that's right.
Tough schedule, but I think, again, I feel like this program has proven that they're not coaching change proof, right? You're always one bad hire away from killing any progress that you made as a program. But I don't think Billy Napier was that hire, and I think that they're going to prove that once again. Let's not forget, this was a team that ran right through this conference their first year moving up from FCS.
It's fair. That's very fair. And you have them to kind of close the loop on the Dukes. You've got James Madison back in the Sun Belt title game and at least in the mix for playoff consideration. So no doubt the talent is there. Boy, if Napier can just pick up right where he left off when he left Louisiana and continue stacking Sun Belt wins, I think there would be kind of a righteous anger, I think, there that he might be able to exercise on some college football fans. I don't know. Maybe he stays off Twitter. That might be for the best. Let's go to Marshall, where the Thundering Herd fans certainly are excited about what they've got going on this year. They love their quarterback. Tony Gibson, back as the head coach, had literally an impossible situation that he inherited last year, but there's certainly a lot of hope that maybe now with a full season and off season under his belt as the head man, that Marshall could be really dangerous in the East.
Yeah, you said it was a tough situation that he was in last year. You remember remember before he was hired that they had to completely opt out of their bowl game because they didn't have a roster. So yeah, it started 4-3. They teetered down the stretch. I think depth really hurt them down the stretch last year where they finished 1-4, but they did discover one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the conference in Carlos Del Rio. So he's back for his redshirt senior season, 2,000 yards to the air and 17 touchdowns last season. And he also had a program record for rushing yards from a quarterback with 660. So I think he needs to be a little bit more efficient with the ball this year. He did okay with that last year. 66.8 is fine, but the type of offense they run, you might want to be pushing a little bit closer to 70. That's going to make him take the next step. And but he got an extra year of eligibility. That was absolutely huge. And Marshall wasn't sure that they were going to get that. So I like the offensive supporting cast. He has DeAndre Termez and Adrian Norton out wide, and then a tight end and Toby Payne to be a nice little safety blanket. The biggest thing that's holding them back, though, is their pass defense. That was the big bugaboo last year, 127th nationally. I think that, it's going to be a complete transition from last year, and that can be spun as a good thing or it can be spun as a bad thing, right? The good thing, obviously, those guys didn't perform last year, so maybe a new room, fresh faces will be good for that room, but they did go out and get a lot of guys in the portal to try to address that, and, 127th in the country, it obviously can't get much worse than that. So, if they can patch that up, this is going to be, I think, a big jump in year 2 is potentially in the offing.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of specific guys that came in. Eddie Pleasant comes in from Buffalo, Terrente Hinton from NC State. Dayton Smith was kind of the only guy that really returns. Last year, he had 3 interceptions, defended, you have 7 PBUs listed in 2025. So maybe that was exactly what the doctor ordered. They went and, addressed the needs. The secondary is maybe ready to go. But talk to me now about the schedule. They get a really fun one. They get to welcome Matt Campbell to Penn State to start.
Yeah, and I think, Matt Campbell hasn't necessarily dominated every G6 and FCS opponent that he ever played at Iowa State. So, if you're looking for a fun, spicy potential upset week 1, wouldn't that be crazy if Marshall and Del Rio Smith go up and just put a shocker and put a damper on that one? But I think the rest of the non-conference schedule is pretty manageable. They got Middle Tennessee. They go to Missouri State, who's going to have a new coach. Gardner Webb obviously should be a win. So, if you're 3-1 going into Sun Belt play, that's going to be, ahead of the game from what they were last year. They open at JMU in league play, so that's going to feel a little difficult, but, and they go to Old Dominion on Halloween as well. So they get maybe the best 2 teams in the division, both on the road. But again, it's another team. They get South Alabama and ULM from the West. So I think if you're looking at the schedule, you're feeling pretty good right off the bat about maybe as many as 5 games, and then just finding a few more wins, one more win to get to a bowl, and then a couple more to be really having a special season.
Now, for those that maybe are finding the previews on YouTube for the first time, they're finding it on the podcast or even on Twitter for the first time. In each of these team previews, which are written out for all 138 teams, we list one prediction for 2026. An easy way for us to kind of level set our expectations, also go back and grade after the season. Your prediction for Marshall was that with a high-powered offense and just enough defense, they've got a big-time upset that they could pull in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, like I mentioned, they play JMU and Old Dominion both on the road. I think they can get one of those games. JMU is the conference opener. Maybe Billy Napier and JMU have stubbed their toe and they're not quite as ready as I think that they will be. And they come in with this offense from Marshall and they're just not quite ready to defend that. I mean, JMU played some close games last year, even with Alonzo Barnett and all the talent that's no longer on that team. So it's not unthinkable. And then ODU on Halloween, weird things happen on Halloween. Who's to say? This is going to be I think JMU and Old Dominion are likely the top 2 teams in this division in some order. I picked JMU in the preview article, but I think they're the top 2 in some order. The race for 3rd place is absolutely wide open in this division. It could be Georgia Southern. It could be Marshall. It could be if App State's talent gets it together, it could be App State. The only team that I feel could not get that is Georgia State. But Marshall is going to be right there in that discussion, and it could be on the backs of a really big upset. They're going to be more than capable of winning one of those two games.
All right, well, let's wrap up the East here in Norfolk. Take us to Old Dominion. The Monarchs overperformed last year. Some history, maybe not overperformed. I think we were really high on the Monarchs going into last season. I think it was probably maybe all the best case scenarios that we saw play out. But Ricky Ronnie's building there. He had a special quarterback, and this team just refused to quit all throughout that season. Ronnie's back as the head coach, but he does have to replace Colton Joseph, who's off to Wisconsin. So talk to me about the Monarchs. What does their roster look like after a historic season in 2025?
Yeah, I think pretty uniquely, when you look around the league, they didn't go to the portal to find a replacement. They feel really good about Quinn Heinkel. He was the offensive MVP in the bowl game last year after Colton Joseph entered the portal. So he's run the offense before. They know what he can do, and he's getting a full offseason as the starter. So they really like what he can do. Colton Joseph was a demon as a dual threat quarterback, and they think Heinkel could do the exact same thing. They like that what he can do with his legs. They like what he can do with his arm. The biggest challenge, I think, is going to be finding who his receivers are, because they lose 3 600-yard receivers from last year. Obviously, Trey Brown was kind of the big name, the number one target, but they also lose Ja'Cory Thomas and Naeem Abdul-Rahim. So it's going to be really interesting to see who steps up. But I do like the running back core. Devin Roche is kind of broke out the last half of last year. And Trey Hall came in from Ole Miss. So that he was he didn't play much in Oxford, but he ran for almost 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns in 20 JUCO games. So he's got a lot of juice there. They're replacing some star power on defense, but I think the secondary has some really nice pieces. Mario Easterly at safety and Zion Frank at corner. They're going to kind of build that foundation there. They have a unique scheme, a 3-2-6 that they run as their base scheme. So
yeah,
rotate through a lot of defensive backs. So it's good to have that solid foundation there. This is going to be another team. I think that, winning 10 games last year, it felt like Ronnie finally got to have a season with nothing that off the field went wrong, right? Like, he started during COVID. His first season was 2020. And so just imagine trying to lay the foundations of your program and then a pandemic hits. So I think he's finally got his feet under him, and we saw what happens when Ronnie can kind of run the program without any off the field things that he can't control happening.
And you love to see those stories, right, where you could tell Ronnie was building the right direction. They had some close shaves early on. They really flirted with upsetting Virginia Tech, and then last year obviously broke through and destroyed the Hokies. Like,
they played Indiana closer than any other team.
Yeah, season opener. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they really. As great as last season could have been, can you imagine if somehow they had picked off Indiana to start the season? The signs were there that they were going to have a great year. It was nice to see them pay that off. This year they get another shot at Virginia Tech under new management. We'll preview the Hokies in our ACC series coming up. But what kind of run do you see out of the Monarchs in 2026?
I love that they get JMU at home. I think that it wasn't a game that went their way last year. Obviously, it kind of got away from them, and that was ultimately what decided the division. That game is probably going to be a big-time game to decide this division again. They get it at home. It's early on in conference play. That's the only thing I don't like about it. I kind of wish that we were getting it the last week of the season or something like that. But I think anything else on the schedule is going to be interchangeable there, but getting that game at home, absolutely massive. They can pull off that win. I think they could make me look foolish for picking JMU to run it back, and they could be the ones winning this division.
Hey, the good news about previewing all 138 teams is never, not once, do any of us ever look foolish. We get everything right. Nobody ever pulls up receipts. It's always gravy there. Well, as we flip it over to the West, and this mostly for the YouTube side, again, if you're discovering us for the first time, We just previewed the Sun Belt East somewhere else on our YouTube channel. You can click over there if you want. But also shout out to you, Trey, for not only writing the preview for Sun Belt, but also phoning in when all other technology has failed you. Our video content, maybe the audio as well. I'll play with it a little bit in post, but usually the video quality is a little bit better. But Trey, playing sick from a technology standpoint. You're crushing it right now. We switch over to the West.
So that's another fun thing. There's no cough button on the phone app for our recording software. So I'm holding it in back here if I have to get a tickle in the throat.
That's right. Very, very silent there. Well, switch it over to the West. And again, going alphabetically here. So if you're clicking into the Arkansas State Red Wolves preview, first of all, welcome. Glad to have you here. But the rest of the West previews will go up in alphabetical order as well. Really fun connection to the Red Wolves, Trey. I got to go to the Xbox Bowl last year, cover that from the press box. As far as we know, the only Xbox Bowl. And Butch Jones, I think, paid off a lot of delayed expectations, a lot of delayed gratification last year with that bowl win over Missouri State. They had a lot of talent roll through Jonesboro, and the wins just hadn't ever come. They did last year. Jalen Rayner and Corey Rucker delivered on the offensive side. They were a blast to watch. But Rucker's gone to the NFL, setting program records in his wake. Jalen Rayner is now at Iowa State trying to rebuild the Cyclones program. So it feels like, at least from a name brand perspective, Jones in Jonesboro is kind of starting over at Arkansas State.
It really is going to be a full rebuild. There's 4 guys competing for that starting quarterback spot. It looked like Trey Owens had the inside track. He was the starter in the spring game, but broke off a 36-yard run and injured his shoulder on that play, or on the play, I believe. And so he was out for the rest of the day. So not sure what his status is. I'm sure that was mostly precautionary, but Texas transfer looked really good in spring ball, but you just hate to see it end like that. They've also got Ethan Crawford back, a couple guys from Vanderbilt that both transferred in the quarterback room. So that's a little odd, but hey, I guess they were buds in Nashville and wanted to run it back in Jonesboro. I love that. There are 7 starters back on the offense. You mentioned losing Corey Rucker, but Chauncey Cobb and Hunter Summers combined for over 1,300 yards behind him last year, and Devin Spencer was the leading rusher. All 3 of those guys are back. They also have 3 starters on the offensive line back, so the offense might actually find some nice continuity pretty quickly. The defense especially, though, is going to be very challenging. Every front, it's not a front 7, it's a 4-2-5 base, but every defensive line and linebacker starter from last year is gone. They're trying to turn to the FCS level to get a few guys. Nicholas Clommie, I think is how you say his name, from Maine, AJ Thomas from McNeese, and Donquarius Parker from NC Central. They are going to try to reestablish that pass rush and try to have their talents transfer up from the FCS level. If that works out, I think that could be a big boost to that side of the ball, but you never want to go into a season not having anybody to say, yeah, I've seen that guy in my uniform. We can build around that on the front 2 levels of the defense. That's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, you made the note in the article as well. You like the size at the linebacker, some of the defensive line guys that they brought in. Tylen Coleman comes in from Florida State, Josh Ofor from NC State. So, there's certainly talent imported on that defensive side, but the defense is going to get tested when we look at the schedule. It's a difficult non-conference slate to start.
Yeah, you go to Memphis and TCU. New coach at Memphis, so anything could happen. But your home game is against the Conference USA champions from last year, Kennesaw State. So in the division, you go to Louisiana and La Tech. You do get Georgia State out of the East, so that's really nice. You'll love to see that on your schedule. But it's a tough draw. It's certainly going to be an uphill battle to get back to a bowl game. When you think about just stopping all the offenses that they're going to face, they're going to face some high-octane offenses, even in this side of the Sun Belt, and it's going to be hard to stop them with that much fluidity on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, Trey, well, take me to Lafayette. Let's grab some lunch in Ragin' Cajun territory, shall we? Talk to me about what Louisiana is going to put on the field this year, a team that, kind of honestly felt like they had their answer in Walker Howard at quarterback last year. That was a tremendous bust. I was certainly raising my hand saying we got that one wrong, but they did inevitably find an answer at quarterback. And I think that should give Louisiana some optimism heading into 2026.
Yeah, Lunch Winfield came in very green, but used his legs really effectively down the stretch last year to scratch and claw the Cajuns back to bowl season. We picked them in the preseason to win the West, and they scraped their way to a bowl game. It was a miss on our part, but Lunch Winfield, 600 yards on the ground, 9 touchdowns. It was definitely his best weapon. He wasn't bad throwing the football, but I noted in the preview article, anytime he attempted more than 20 passes, he threw at least 1 interception per game, or averaged 1 interception per game in those games. So they've been really working on him with consistency in the passing game this offseason. He's getting the full offseason as the starter, so that's a big boost to his morale as a quarterback and his progression as a quarterback. Here's the thing I'm not pumped about, though, Mitch, is in an era where you can go find plug-and-play starters, and it seems like a bigger brand and a bigger, more attractive program in the Sun Belt in Louisiana. They really didn't go do that. They lost only 7 players to the portal from last year. That's great. They only brought in 5 transfers. And I don't know. Like last year, yes, they did scratch and claw. They figured some things out down the stretch. They found a way to get to a bowl game. But the decision to just completely run it back, essentially, with that roster has me pretty concerned if we're going to talk about a jump from Louisiana to true Sun Belt title contention this year. Now, I'm not, in obviously on the ins and outs of their NIL, what they can offer guys. Maybe this is DeSormo just operating with one hand tied behind his back and rallying around his guys because that's the best he can do. I don't know. If that's the case, I'm happy to learn about that. But just struck me as odd. Like as an outsider, wouldn't go more heavily in the portal to try to patch what I feel like are some pretty obvious holes.
Yeah, I can see how on one side you'd like the talent coming back. Shelton Sampson's back in the wide receiving core, former LSU wide receiver, blue chip kid, showed lots of signs of being a star last year. Secondary, you really like some of the guys that come back. Brent Gordon Jr. had a tremendous year last year. But then you look and kind of the heart and soul of your team and your top 2 leading rushers, they're gone. You lose linebackers, you lose defensive line guys. And, I think specifically you can really break a game open at really all levels of college football, but especially at the G6 level, if you have excellent edge rushers and to not go out and kind of stack the deck right in that front 6 or front 7 now, maybe feels like a little bit of a misstep. So we'll have to see what the Raging Cajuns have cooked up there. The schedule is interesting. They get a date with USC to open the year. Talk to me about where you find them falling as far as the league slate goes.
Yeah, on the league slate, I think their 3 toughest games are right off the bat, right? They host Arkansas State, they go to newcomer and in-state rival Louisiana Tech, and then they host Troy. That's legitimately the 3 teams that are probably going to be competing with you for the top of the league. It lightens obviously after that because you play the bottom half of the division. Their draw from the East isn't bad at all. They get Coastal at home and they go to Georgia State. Like I mentioned, if that's your road draw from the East, you are the lucky winner from the entire West. So the schedule sets them up relatively nicely down the stretch, but man, I could totally see them being in a hole again. If you're talking about, I think they'll beat Lamar. I think they play UAB and Charlotte in the non-conference. Those are bottom feeders in the American. So you're looking at least 3 wins at the start of the season, but if you're 3-4, going 0-3 in those first 3 games, then you're scratching and clawing back to bowl season once again. And I feel like Louisiana once more. They got the taste of how successful that program can be under Napier, and I don't know if they're scratching and clawing again to a bowl game, which again, they're using the exact same players as last year. We're relying a lot on development here and not going and getting game breakers in the portal. I got to wonder if that's causes a lot of questions in Lafayette.
Well, rooting for Louisiana. I think the Sun Belt West is
Yeah.
so much more fun when they're playing hard and playing towards the top. They're one of two teams in the West that have actually won the division. We'll talk about Troy in just a minute, but first let's go to Monroe. And we don't often have to qualify our coverage of these teams. I think this may be probably the quickest team that we move through, because as of time of recording, ULM still has not posted an official 2026 roster. I cannot fathom how that's a thing, but listen, we know that Brian Vincent is taking that program, it seems like, in the right direction. They've found a way to win some games. I like the branding refresh that they've gone through as well. But at the same time, like, if your SID is not getting an official roster out and we are here at the end of June, it's really hard to cover them the same that we do the other 137 teams. So, kind of keep it maybe to the tapas menu, just general highlights here, and we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for an identity on both sides of the ball. And I wrote that they just need to show signs of life, specifically on offense, because they only scored 16.6 points per game last year. That was 130th best in the country. They're near the bottom in most categories. So they did hire a new offensive coordinator in Jesse Monolato. So I think that's a big plus. If you look at his numbers, since there wasn't a roster to dig into, I dug in his numbers as a head coach at Iowa Central Community College, which I don't know if you've ever perused JUCO sports websites. They all use the same program, and it is fun to navigate, let me tell you. But what I could find is that Monolato averaged 38.6 points per game last year. There's a high octane offense. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've done film study on it, but the results of the scoring give you a little optimism that maybe there can be a new spark and a new life and maybe a new identity on offense. The defense is facing, very similar struggles. They shook up the staff on that side of the ball too. They promoted from within for defensive coordinator with Tony Reffett coming up, and Ernest Hill got demoted. And he's assistant head coach now, so I don't know if it was necessarily a demotion, but they saw his skills as more useful in other positions. We'll just say it that way. But yeah, this is going to be a very, very tough rebuild. Brian Vincent obviously almost had a magical season his first year, starting off 5-1, and then they finished 0-6 to miss a bowl game for yet again. So there's certainly talent in the area. There's certainly a lot of talent in Louisiana that doesn't get picked up by the big boys in the state, but they've got to find a way to, one, get them on campus, and two, hold on to it. But like you said, S.J. Toohey, new athletic director at ULM. Yes, that S.J. Toohey from Blindside fame. You got to get on your SID, man. And I don't want to go where I wanted to go with someone that covers the team. I won't go there, but yeah, we'll stop there with ULM, because I think it's an uphill battle. I think their fans know that, and I think that if they're looking for optimism, it comes from just getting new voices in those coordinator rooms.
Sure. All right, well, let's stay in the state. Let's go up to Ruston, Louisiana. Talk to me about Louisiana Tech. After a massive buyout to get out of Conference USA, they want to be a part of the Sun Belt, maybe some bigger rev share agreements. I like Louisiana Tech's fit in the Sun Belt, and this team really has a chance to maybe spoil some seasons in year one.
Yeah, I think this is the biggest sleeper in the conference for me, because if they can, first of all, they don't have to play. What were they originally scheduled to play? Like 17 conference games this year, because
great.
Both CUSA and the Sun Belt listed them on their schedules, but they've got all that drama behind them. Blake Baker should be back. He tore his ACL last fall, but I think that if he can find some more consistency as a passer, I think that he could definitely be a solid option for the Bulldogs. It looks like that he could be back for the opener, but if there's any setbacks, Trey Kukic, I think is how you say his name, he ran for quite a bit of yards in relief of Blake Baker last year, so they can definitely build the offense around his legs. The defense is the most exciting to me, because they were ranked 35th in the country in scoring last year. Now, that was against a Conference USA slate that admittedly was not as good as what they're going to face in the Sun Belt, but Luke Olson's back as a defensive coordinator. They were just absolutely lethal in the red zone, 8th nationally in scoring percentage in the red zone. And they've got a nice core coming back. Jaden Mayfield, Kobe Fields, Zarek Hill. It's a really nice linebacker core to build around with those guys. And they've got Joshua Brantley, too, at the edge spot that is big. Looks like he could be on a P4 roster body. So I think they're a dark horse. I think that they could certainly make some noise, especially in the Western Division. If they were in the East, I would say the transition is going to be a lot tougher, but I think they can make some noise and they could really push towards the top of that division even in year one.
It feels like Kobe Fields has been in Ruston for a long time since he transferred in from LSU. I think this is his 3rd season there, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, excited to see what he can produce. One more go around with the Bulldogs. Excited to see what Louisiana Tech can do, and if they can truly, quote unquote, pull some upsets. You've got them finishing 2nd in the division in their debut season. How do they get there?
I think it's a combination of, I think they have some nice continuity. They've been with the same coaching staff and they've been with the same core group of guys, on having a returning quarterback, having a nice core on defense. I think defense is certainly going to lead the way, but that continuity is just so much better than what most other teams that they're going to be playing in this division have, right? We talked about Arkansas State and how much they have to replace. We've talked about Louisiana, and yes, they have continuity, but is it good continuity? That's the question for me. And then towards the bottom of this division, some other teams we'll get into, there's just a lot of messes to clean up in this division right now. So I don't want to say it's by default, but when you look around the league and especially around this division, like I like them better than South Alabama right now. I like them better than Southern Miss. I like them, at home in some other matchups, right, that they get at home. So, yeah, I like it. I don't love that they draw Old Dominion and Georgia Southern from the East. That's going to be pretty brutal, honestly. But if they can just find a way to win one of those games, I think they're going to be ahead of most of the other teams in their division.
Well, speaking of South Alabama, let's go to Mobile. Story time from me. I went to Mobile last spring for a golf trip, and we got to go to the campus of South Alabama. We were actually playing at a club that was hosting a big fundraiser for USA donors, and I kind of fell in love with the city, with the program. Just it was a true Southern culture over there, and I found it very, very charming. Unfortunately, the football season wasn't nearly as charming as, they were having to replace Gio Lopez at quarterback, and Major Applewhite, I think, under-delivered a little bit on some expectations that they had for the program. So heading into 2026, what do you like about South Alabama? Can they get some of that offensive magic that they had found with Gio Lopez a couple of seasons ago back this year?
Well, that's the key, because, if Major Applewhite is going to hang his hat on offense, and as an offensive guy and former quarterback, you would think he would be. They finished the season last year 75th in total offense. And now that's not as bad as some other teams in the Sun Belt West, to be clear, but it's definitely well below the standard I think that they've set for themselves. They've got some nice continuity, right? They've got Bishop Davenport coming back at quarterback. They've got Keenan Phillips, who, in a backup role, had 4.8 yards per carry last year. I think the bigger change could be on the defensive side of the ball. They brought in his old buddy Todd Orlando to take over the reins on the defensive side of the ball. They go way back from their time at Texas. They added Chris Ashoff to coach the defensive line. So they didn't score a lot of points, and they gave up a ton of points last year. And obviously that's not going to be a good combination, but they are going to have to build around a new core on defense. They are going to have to rebuild kind of the front seven like a couple other teams in this division. But I think that when you have continuity at the quarterback position, that's a nice thing to build on. And having a veteran DC, like Todd Orlando has been a defensive coordinator at some big time programs. And I think that, he's a veteran, he's been around the block. I think that schematically, I don't think that's going to be an issue. It's just whether or not he has the actual Jimmies and Joes to make it happen.
Well, look at the schedule for me. And I see a 2-2 start in the non-conference. Southeastern Louisiana and Ohio, a rebuilding Ohio, come to Mobile. They go to Tulane. They go to Kentucky, teams that will just be more talented, more put together, quite frankly, than the Jaguars. Although I guess anything is certainly possible on a Saturday afternoon in the South. But in league play, when you talk about the Sun Belt West and then who they draw from the East, can you paint me a case for optimism? It doesn't necessarily feel like that they have a chance to win the division. But then again, we've seen special stories come out of a conference like the Sun Belt in the past.
Yeah, getting Arkansas State and Louisiana on the road is really tough because I think those are the teams that they're really competing with, the tier that I would place them in. If they're going to break into that tier, break above that tier, beating one or both of those teams would be huge, and they get them both on the road. That's really tough. They have to play Marshall on the road as well. That's never an easy road trip. They get App State, a team that, like we talked about on their preview, is going to be rebuilding but very talented. So I think that they're going to be a team that relies heavily on the offense once again. They have the offense to definitely pull off an upset or two, but the consistency and building a team that can actually reach a bowl game or get higher than that is going to be really tough with what I think they're going to be trotting out there on the defensive side of the ball. I think that they could put up 30 points a lot of nights if Major Applewhite's back in his bag, but they might give up 35. And that's just going to be really hard to watch for the fans there in Mobile.
Yeah. Well, Southern Alabama certainly has, South Alabama has hopefully improvement on the horizon. A team that, boy, it's going to be hard to reach the plateau that they set last year is Southern Miss down in Hattiesburg. You mentioned a little bit earlier, they're the team that I chose for my college football 27 dynasty, which we've actually got a podcast coming out with a special guest on that game here in a couple of days, couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. But Charles Huff came in last year and did a lot of good after coming down from Marshall. That exodus and coaching transition has been well documented. It was a weird scenario for both schools, to be quite honest. But Huff's gone now. 1 year in Hattiesburg, and he's out the door to go take over Memphis. And so they brought in Blake Anderson, comes in formerly of Utah State. It's a team with the least returning production in America. I think it's just 22% for the entire roster. They have like 2 or 3 starters overall. So a lot of new, a lot of things that don't necessarily inspire confidence. So what is a realistic expectation for the Golden Eagles this year in year one with a very tough Sun Belt schedule?
Buddy, I don't know. I know I'm supposed to have the answers, but first of all, Blake Anderson was kind of a choice, right? Like, can we agree?
I don't get it.
Obviously, the championships speak for themselves. He's won this division before at Arkansas Conference, I should say, at Arkansas State. He won the Mountain West in year 1 at Utah State. We don't need to get into the ins and outs of the legal situation that he faces at Utah State, but it's not a great publicity look to hire a guy in his situation, even if it does come out that, technically he was in the right or whatever. But man, it's a lot to replace. He was there last year as the offensive coordinator, so he got to evaluate who he wanted to keep. I guess that's a positive. He did keep a couple of quarterbacks. Landry Leidy got some action when Braylon Braxton was injured last year. John White is a redshirt sophomore that's also still on the roster, and he brought in Ethan Hampton from Illinois. So that's going to be kind of the 3-way battle. But really, I think that battle is going to come down to who can find the most consistency with all the new faces, because there's 60 new players coming in. The offense, I think, with Blake Anderson will find a way to put up some points, but the defense, man, first of all, they gave up 27 per game last year. Not awful, but definitely could be improved upon. But you talk about a lack of returning production. Top 9 tacklers are gone. 23 of the top 25 tacklers from last season are gone. So it's a complete crapshoot. It's Matthias Haygood and Avery Sledge. Those are your 2 of the top 25 tacklers from last year. I think they were number 10 and number 23 or something like that. So it's going to be a complete rebuild. Joe Bolden was promoted to defensive coordinator from within after Anderson was hired, and it's going to be a crapshoot, man. Like maybe they can put a competitive unit together, but it's going to be duct tape and baling wire for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that schedule's gross. They go to Auburn, they go to Tulane, they play UConn, and then in the conference schedule, I guess you could say the bright side is that you get Louisiana and Arkansas State at home. The draw from the East though is disgusting. They host James Madison, as you talked about earlier. They go to Old Dominion away. Like it's really hard to look at this schedule and go, hey, even if things are working, even if the offense is scoring points, here's where you find your wins.
Yeah, they seem to be the sacrificial lamb on paper for those top two teams in the East, or top two on paper. But if you're looking for optimism as a Southern Miss fan, Blake Anderson was not projected to do very much in his first season at Utah State, and he orchestrated a massive turnaround that included beating a Pac-12 team in a bowl game. And winning. So the coaching prowess, I think, is certainly there with Blake Anderson. The off the field stuff, we'll see if that affects his on the field at this point. But I think that if you're looking for optimism, he did kind of come out of nowhere and do great in his first year at Utah State.
All right, we'll bring us home with the champs. Troy Trojans. Gerard Parker, was not the popular guy in that year one. But boy, it paid off last year, and Troy certainly seems like they should be, if not the favorite to win the West. I mean, 1A, 1B.
Yeah, they did it on the back of their defense last year, and a lot of those defensive guys are back. They've got Justin Powell, TJ Thompson in the linebacker core. Donnie Smith is the big highlight at defensive end, 11 sacks last year, 13 and a half tackles for loss. Brought in some nice P4 level transfers. So the defense, I think, is going to be a force to be reckoned with yet again. What I'm really excited about with Troy, though, is they saw that their offense was an absolute problem last year. They were dead last in the conference in total offense, 11th in scoring. They needed a new face and a new vision on that side of the ball, so they went out and got Adam Austin from Tarleton State. And I don't know about you if you followed the Texans as much, being somewhat local to here, but that is a fun offense. It's a veer and shoot look is what Austin calls it. They scored 42.4 points per game last year, won a conference title, and got the 4 seed in the FCS playoffs. So it's going to be a big shift in scheme and philosophy, and just I think confidence and something resembling coherence on that side of the ball. But I really like that pickup, and he's going to have 2 quarterbacks to work with. But two guys got experience last year. Goose Crowder had 11 touchdown passes, and Tucker Kilcrease flashed some dual threat ability. So I think that's going to give a lot of good flexibility to whoever can pick up this scheme, or if they have different skill sets that are good at different parts of this scheme. I think that's going to be really nice for Austin to work with. So you take the best defense in the conference, you combine it with an offense that, hey, they won the division getting basically nothing from that side of the ball last year. If we get, just even marginal improvement, this is going to be a team that could maybe even compete with the East winner in the championship game this year, should they take care of business in the West.
I love it. That's exciting stuff. Where do you have Troy finishing up after this season's all said and done?
I got them winning the West. You talk about, some leagues, it's really hard to go back to back. The Sun Belt West has kind of been defined by dynasties. There's usually one team that rises up, whether that's Billy Napier's Louisiana, whether that's Troy a few years ago before this current run that they're on, all the way back with Blake Anderson and Arkansas State winning a couple back to back, right? But I think it's their turn right now. It really does feel like it's their turn, and it's Gerard Parker's turn to kind of have another dynasty at Troy. And it feels like they are definitely the team to beat, and somebody else is going to really have to take it from them and be more excellent at one or two things. One side of the ball in particular, I think their defense is the best unit by far in this division. Until somebody can prove that they are more excellent on one side of the football than Troy's defense is, I think it's their division to lose.
Awesome. Well, Trey, that is all 14 teams from the Sun Belt. Take a breath, take a bow. I know you don't have the cough button, but man, we made it. I'm excited for Sun Belt football this year. We'll see if they get a playoff team in. We just went through the Pac-12. pretty recently. I am of the opinion that the Pac-12 is the deepest G6 conference, at least so far. I think the American is right there as well. But the point being, I think we should have a lot of fun G6 football this year. I'm fired up for the Sun Belt. I know you are as well. So with that, my friend, I think it's about time that we sign off. For Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. More conference previews and special guests. You don't want to miss the special guests coming around the corner. Until next time, so long, everybody.